This is Aaron again from the Widescreen Gaming Forum, and this is my review of the DOMA PCI Pro open air case from MyOpenPC. Let me start by saying I really like unique cases. When I rebuilt my rig a few years ago, I picked up the 20th anniversary PC 777 from Leon Lee. I had the black version you see here on the right. When I started benchmarking and reviewing cards here on the Widescreen Gaming Forum, I decided I needed something with easier component access. With that in mind, I picked up the Antec Skeleton. This case worked pretty well, however it was a pain to disconnect and reconnect the PCI Express power cables from graphics cards. The cables would get caught on the lip of the fan housing, and I had to reach under the fan to disconnect and reconnect cables with each swap. An overabundance of visible wires and general untidiness was another thing I didn't like about the Antec Skeleton. To make component testing easier, I decided to look for an open-air test bench. Between Google and Amazon, I came across the DOMA Pro PCI from MyOpenPC. Unlike almost every other case, the DOMA Pro PCI does require assembly. It comes in this flat box and is basically the IKEA of PC cases. This is a picture of all the parts, along with the instructions, cabling, screw kit, and tool. Each piece of black acrylic is covered in a plastic film, which must be removed before each step in the assembly. One thing I really like about the packaging is the 6-compartment screw kit that is sitting next to the orange plexi nut driver. Each compartment is individualized and labeled on the bottom. This is significantly better than a grab bag of screws. So on with the assembly. The feet of the case are made up of the optical and hard drives. Here in the first step, I've attached a set of supports to the optical drive. Note the notched areas at the top that will attach to the motherboard plate. Here is a pair of hard drives attached to another set of supports. For both the optical drive and the hard drives, the connections will be towards the rear of the case. Here's the base of the case, with 2 locking mechanisms installed. These lock in the drive feet and prevent them from slipping from the case. You can see these attached, one on each side with a pair of small screws. Here's a close-up of the locking mechanism for the optical drive. It sits under the motherboard and won't be accessible after the installation is completed. This is the backplane of the case, with the exhaust port for the power supply on the left and the PCI guides on the right. Swapping PCI cards is completely toolless. Here you can see the locking mechanism down where it would be in position to hold your cards in place. Here you see it moved into the open position so that PCI cards can be removed. Once you have this retaining clip installed, the next step is to attach the backplane to the motherboard case. You can see it slotted into position here. It is secured by the rear legs, which feed through both the backplane and the bottom plate. The legs are secured to the backplane as shown here, and secured to the base plate as shown here. At this point, the case is basically assembled. Next step is to install the motherboard standoffs. This is done with the included plexi nut driver. You use it as shown here to attach the standoff into the base. Having a small screwdriver to hold the screw underneath is helpful. Here we see the case with the backplane installed and all of the standoffs in place. Note that the case is tipping forward because the rear feet are installed, but the drive feet are not yet installed. Here you can see the optical and hard drive components installed, along with the status LEDs and power reset buttons. Here's a close-up of the drive locked in place, along with the buttons and status lights. Here you see the serial ATA cables routed between the case and the hard drives. After installing the motherboard, I realized the serial ATA ports were above the optical drive and ended up rewriting the cables there. Jumping forward a few steps, and here is an initial picture of the motherboard, graphics card, and power supply installed. I chose a modular power supply to reduce potential cable clutter. After getting the wiring set, I used wire ties to keep everything neat. Since that original installed, I picked up some long crossfire bridges so that I could provide more space for my graphics cards to breathe. You can also just make out the serial ATA cables coming out from under the front video card and routing above the optical drive. In the end, I actually removed the status LEDs and the buttons, as my motherboard has onboard power and reset buttons, each of which have a status LED in the center. You can see them here. Additionally, removing these 2 lights and 2 buttons allowed me to further reduce my cable clutter. All in all, I really like the DOMA Pro PCI case. If you're looking for an open-air case or a test bench, I would give it a serious look. The upside is a minimalist case, that it's a conversation piece, and offers surprisingly good cable management. Another plus side is the low price. The DOMA Pro PCI case runs $50 on Amazon. Most other acrylic cases start at double that price or more. On the downside, the case isn't made for frequent transport. The manufacturer shows the case being carried by the handle on the right corner, but I would never do that. If you need to transport it, grab it from 2 sides and preferably put it on something flat to support the whole unit. It is a magnet for dust in the sense that there are no 4-wall case to keep dust out. Luckily, dust is very easy to clean given the open nature and a can of compressed air. Also, the case only supports one optical drive and 2 hard drives. If you're running an array of drives, this case isn't for you. It also isn't made to work with any sort of water cooling setup. MyOpenPC does have a step up from this case with their Dragon model. Crappy name aside, it does offer support for 2 optical drives and 4 hard drives. As I look to replace my main drive with a solid-state drive and swap my single Fraps drive for a RAID 0 array, I may look towards this step up. They also offer the Wing model, which has space for additional drives as well as a unique adjustable motherboard plate. And finally, on the opposite end of the spectrum is the simpler DOMA Pro. It only supports 1 optical drive and 1 hard drive and doesn't offer a backplane to support PCI cards or a larger power supply. I picked one of these up for testing the AMD Fusion platform. Here you can see my Asus E35 M1M Pro motherboard with the E350 Llano AMD APU. It has a laptop-style power brick on the far right, which is attached to the case with wire ties. If you're looking for an open-air or test bench case, and you're not looking to run a drive array or water cool, then the DOMA Pro PCI may well fit your needs, and I heartily recommend it.